Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Thank you so much for joining us to this particular webinar. We are really excited. It is being hosted by the Ecumenical Disability Advocates Network, which is part of the mission and evangelism work of the World Council of Churches, and more specifically, Mission from the Margins. So welcome to this webinar. We hope that we can learn, we can share, and we can have a conversation on the issue of disability inclusion. And so I know some of you are wondering, what are we going to talk about? So this is a webinar that is going to launch the advocacy for the rights and inclusion of persons with disabilities. This has been a project that we've been having, and this is the fourth phase of the project. And this particular period, we are having the theme towards inclusive and decolonial churches, advancing disability rights and justice. And so during this particular webinar, we are going to introduce you to the objectives, the activities, and the expected outcomes for you all, as well as provide a platform for dialogue with some of the select members of the network on the role of churches in advancing inclusive and decolonial approaches to disability rights and theology through church engagement, and make a call for collaboration among churches, organizations of persons with disabilities, theological institutions, and development partners. So welcome once more.
Thank you so much, Angeline, for that introduction. We are now going to hear our keynote address from Mr. Conrad Harris, who is the Executive Director of Jamaica Society for the Blind. And our keynote address is focusing on churches as catalyst for disability inclusive justice, which is going to highlight the theological, social, and developmental rationale for engaging churches in CRPD domestication. Welcome, Mr. Conrad.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues all, I am mindful of the time allotted for this presentation, and under normal circumstances, I would be happy, and even happy if the time was shorter. But in looking at the topic to be discussed, I am realizing that it's impossible to deal with it in the 10 minutes that has been allocated. But fortunately for you, I have decided not to take advantage of your presence here, and I will do my best to ensure that I complete within the time 10 minutes given. It is generally acknowledged that religious organizations have served as vital sources of care for and protection for persons with disabilities. And that is worldwide. Many people with disabilities, particularly those who were either born with a disability or, or who acquired it in childhood, would attest that their current circumstances are significantly attributed to the support received from religious entities. Personally, I was raised at the Salvation Army School for the Blind in Kingston, in Jamaica. As a teenager, I had the privilege of being a part of the school's reactivated integration program, which saw me attending Calabar High School, a proud Baptist institution. And for many years, programs designated to train blind adults in independent living skills at the Jamaica Society for the Blind, as well as various other initiatives for individuals with disabilities throughout Jamaica, received backing from the Christian Blind Mission, CBM. It is evident that religious organizations have made considerable contributions to enhancing the lives of persons with disabilities. The support provided by religious organizations has existed long before many governments and international organizations began to seriously consider the needs of individuals with disabilities. This care continues to expand, with numerous churches establishing special needs ministries aimed at supporting people with disabilities. Such initiatives are often rooted in theology teachings that emphasize care for the poor, afflicted, and downtrodden. Importantly, we are reminded that giving should not be transactional, but God does promise that our generosity will be rewarded. Proverbs 28, verse 8 says, "He who gives to the poor will lack nothing, but he who closes his eyes to them receives many curses." Also, Proverbs 14:21, "He who despises his neighbor sins, but blessed is he who is kind to the needy." However, while churches have made significant strides in reaching individuals with disabilities, it seems that many congregations have unfortunately fixated on merely bringing and giving. This approach, while commendable, often overlooks crucial aspects of right and justice. Proverbs 31, 8 and 9 states, Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy." One central theme of biblical scripture is the equality of all people before God. Galatians 3:28 says, "So there is no difference between Jew and Gentile, between slaves and free people, between men and women. You are all one in union with Christ Jesus." If we conservatively estimate that at least 10% of the population has a disability, what does it signify if your church community lacks representation from individuals with disabilities? Does this not raise questions about the fulfillment of the commandment to love one's neighbor? If your church council does not include individuals with disabilities, does this reflect broader issues concerning equality and opportunities within the church for disabled individuals to participate and serve? Furthermore, what implications arise if you live in a community or a country where 90% or more of the working population is employed, yet only 10 to 15% of individuals with disabilities find gainful employment? Does the church not bear the responsibility to advocate for the rights of individuals with disabilities, to secure employment, fulfill their potential, and contribute meaningfully to society? And what if this pattern is replicated in all other spheres of life? In transportation, where many persons with disabilities have to pay significantly more to travel because persons in wheelchairs cannot be accommodated in the public system. In banking and commerce, where you can be refused access to credit simply because you have a disability. In the legal system, where a deaf person might not be able to make a report because no arrangement is made for sign language interpretation. And I could go on. If we are to uphold the principle of equality, we must affirm that all individuals share the same rights. And when those rights are infringed, the church must defend them. Isaiah 1, verse 17 says, "Learn to do right, see that justice is done, help those who are oppressed, give orphans and their rights, and defend widows." What are some of the actionable steps churches can take to promote the inclusion of persons with disabilities? We can encourage input, engage individuals with disabilities in discussions about how to enhance their participation within the church. Recognize that disabilities are diverse. A one-size-fits-all solution may not address the challenges faced by all individuals. Look at accessibility considerations. While ramps significantly improve physical accessibility, our efforts should not conclude with getting the persons using a wheelchair through the entrance doors. True accessibility extends to facilities within the church, such as bathrooms. Churches can prioritize wide doors, wide aisles, and movable seating arrangements to facilitate persons using wheelchair. Moreover, accessibility encompasses communication and information. The church can ensure that material are available in various formats, including Braille, large print, electronic versions, and audio formats for individuals with visual impairment, as well as offering sign language interpretation for persons who are deaf. Churches should create opportunities for service and connection. Churches must recognize that individuals with disabilities seek opportunities to connect and to contribute, not only to be served. Encourage their involvement in small group ministries, which can foster a sense of community. Individuals with disabilities should be empowered to participate in all aspects of church service, including leadership roles, and provided with the resources necessary to facilitate this involvement. It is vital for the church to understand that individuals with disabilities do not necessarily come seeking to be fixed. We are integral and equal members of God's body, created in his image, and we are fearfully and wonderfully made. In closing, let us commit ourselves to the cause of disability inclusion within our communities, thus fulfilling our collective responsibility to advocate for justice, serve with love, and uphold the dignity of all individuals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Conrad. As we proceed with listening to our presenters, we'd like to call on you if you have a question, if you have a comment, kindly put it in the chat box. We are now going to listen to our second speaker, who is the Eden Program Coordinator, Madam Angeline Okola. She is going to present the project that we are launching today, Advocacy for the Rights and Inclusion of Persons with Disabilities, Phase 4. She'll give us an overview of the project goals, who the implementing partners are, the activities, and the expected results. Welcome, Angeline.
Thank you very much. So we have talked about phase 4 of this particular project because we felt that there are many other areas that we had not reached when we started phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And so I would really like to urge us to look out at especially the churches that we are going to work with, and we see how we as persons with disabilities, persons with interest in disabilities, persons who are working in research institutions, and all other stakeholders can be able to accompany us in this process. So I have shared in a previous webinar 2 years ago, after the World Council of Churches General Assembly, that we were focusing on the issues of public theology and persons with disabilities. And so from that perspective of public theology, most of us were of the idea that there is a lot that we need to do as persons with disabilities, as a network of people with disabilities in the churches, and also those who are drawn towards working with persons with disabilities. Because public theology advocates for the rights and inclusion of persons with disabilities by drawing on theological perspectives and also engaging in the social justice advocacy. And this involves challenging societal barriers and promoting a more inclusive understanding of disability within religious communities and also the wider world. And we have selected the themes that we will be working on in regards to public theology. And the first theme is the theme of inclusion. How do we promote full participation and belonging for persons with disabilities in all aspects of life? The second theme is justice. We need to start addressing systematic inequalities and advocating for the treatment and equal opportunities for persons with disabilities. And the third theme that we are working on is dignity. That is affirming the inherent worth and value of each and every person, regardless of their abilities, because we are all created in the image of God. And the fourth theme is solidarity. That is standing in solidarity with persons with disabilities and working together to create a more just and inclusive society. In essence, public theology gives us that framework for understanding disability as a social justice issue and empowers our religious communities and our churches to be agents of change, advocating for a more inclusive and equitable world for all. Next slide, please. And so, what are the overview goals of this particular project? The goal is to promote inclusive and equal churches and communities where persons with disabilities enjoy their human rights. And in this, we are going to look at two strategic objectives. The first one is domestication and implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities to ensure equal enjoyment of the rights of persons with disabilities on livelihoods and climate change. And the second bit of it is have an enhanced understanding of decolonizing discourses on disability that contributes to disability justice, healing, and equality. Next slide, please. And so we have come up with several activities which we actually hope they will help us towards achieving this particular goal. The first one is carry out a baseline study on disability inclusive policies, strategies, and programs by the churches. The second one is carry out a research study on churches' involvement in promoting the domestication and implementation of the convention. The third one is regional advocacy capacity building training on promoting domestication and implementation of the convention. And this we will do together with clergy and organizations of persons with disabilities. The next one is development of 10 position papers on decolonizing theology. And here we really need a lot of partnership with the religious organizations, persons with disabilities, people who have been doing a lot of writing in the area of disability, those who are interested in disability theology, students, and everybody who would really like to wrestle with this particular aspect of decolonizing disability theology. The next one is Decolonizing Disability Theology Conference. And when we will have this particular conference, we hope that we will establish a global platform of academicians, theological educators, students, and persons with disabilities, because this is that platform that is going to carry forward the work over and beyond this particular project period. And then finally, we hope that we will be able to develop disability theology program at the Bose Ecumenical Institute. That is one of the premier institutes that are run by the World Council of Churches under the University of Geneva, towards ensuring that we do get people who are well grounded on ecumenism. We hope that this will serve as a model to other theological institutions to start such kind of programs. Next slide, please. And so you'll ask yourself, so who are these partners? The partners, first of all, we are going to have the churches, and from the churches, we are going to look at the legal representatives, because we know that there is a lot of work that can be done in our churches, but without the legal representatives really getting to understand what the issues are, wrestling with the matter and accepting it, only then will we be able to make the changes that we need in our synods, in our dioceses, and in our parishes, because these are the decision makers and these are the people who actually implement the policy that most of our assemblies or general councils come up with. The second are organizations of persons with disabilities. We are going to work with the national federations of persons with disabilities and also single disability organizations of persons with disabilities, because some of these national federations might not be able to cover all the disability groupings, especially those that have parents and also those with very high support needs. And then finally, we will work with government ministries, especially responsible for climate change and disability mainstreaming. And now we have mapped out from a process that we have been going through as a network of persons with disabilities on the various countries that we will work with, and not only in the country, but also the particular church, because we feel that if we work deeper and use this kind of work that we have done as a case study, we are going to share with other churches on some of the lessons and the learnings that we will have come up with. So as I have displayed here, we have the Presbyterian Church of East Africa, we have the Reformed Church in Zimbabwe, and the Anglican Church in Kenya as our partners in Africa. And from Asia, we have the United Methodist Church in Philippines and the Indonesia Christian Church. And in Latin America, we are focusing on the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Brazil and the Presbyterian Church in Colombia. And as I have mentioned, these are churches that we are going to work with them, but ensure that we share all the lessons and the learnings, especially in regional ecumenical organization gatherings, to get more people get involved and also learn from each other on how we can adequately advocate for persons with disabilities. Thank you so much. And merci, gracias, and grazie. Over to you, Siobata.
Thank you so much, Angeline. We'd kindly like to remind you, if you have a question, if you have a comment, kindly put it in the chat box. We are now going to proceed with the next part of the webinar, where we are going to listen to voices of our partners from Africa, Asia, and Latin America. They are going to reflect on disability rights and decolonizing disability theology from the context of their region. And the first speaker will be Ajiasari Puji, who is a technical expert in disability inclusion, gender, and communication, giving us the perspective of the Asia region. Welcome, Ajiasari.
Yes. So, good evening, sisters and brothers in Christ. Thank you for the opportunity given to deliver a snapshot of disability in Asia and where I live in Indonesia. Today, I want to speak about something that touches both our faith and our shared humanity, that the church in Asia truly embrace people with disability, not only as an objects of pity or charity, but how we can ensure people with disability as equal partners in God's work and of renewal. Across Asia, people with disabilities are still too often seen through the lens of charity, as those who need help, not, not as those who have something vital to offer. In many churches, ramps are missing, sign language is rare, restrooms inaccessible, and sermons sometimes still use blindness, paralysis, or deafness or metaphors for spiritual weakness. And yet, many of these same people are leading choirs, mentoring youth, managing community projects, raising families, and showing us what faith in action truly looks like. The problem is not ability. It is attitude. The real barrier is not in the body. It is in the way society and the church have learned to see the body. As a woman with disability whose career is mainstreaming gender equality, disability, and social inclusion, who also belong in the community, I have experienced and witnessed strong need to ensure that inclusion is becoming a priority, both in religious community while working along with governments. When we label difference as defect, as disability, we shrink God's creation. But when we recognize diversity as divine, we begin to glimpse the fullness of life that God has intended. If I may bring up feminist and liberation theology, it reminds us that God reveals God's self through human experience, through our bodies, our stories, our pain, and our joy. Our Bible has always reminds us that God stands with the oppressed. I think this is very, very important that we remember that our church, our community must stand with the oppressed, must stand with those who never get access, who is unable to even dreams of a life with dignity. And what does it mean to our faith? For me, it means that as Christians, we stand with marginalized and vulnerable groups, including people with disabilities, in which we must never tire to remind ourselves that in which the community must always stand with those who is left behind. The Bible also reminds us that everybody, women's body, disabled bodies, marginalized bodies, is a sacred space where God's love can dwell. When Jesus healed, he didn't just fix bodies. He restored people to community. He touches those no one else would touch. In reflecting this with what happened in places that I have worked with, I think this is very important to remind our religious communities that now people with disabilities has always wants to contribute to their community. However, the access in which they want to participate, to contribute, both in religious communities and in society at large, is still full of barriers. The stigma is what hinder a lot of people with disabilities to be able to participate and be fully recognized within the community. For me, the resurrection of Christ when he rose from the dead and he still had his scars, he did not erase them. He kept them as a sign that redemption doesn't mean perfection, but it also means transformation. This, I believe, that the transformation will happen in churches. And it will bring many reliefs that a lot of generations of people with disabilities, numerous women with disabilities, men with disabilities, believe that when they believe, it is a living testimony of grace, strength, and divine. Inclusion must start with listening. What do you need to thrive? What do we need to thrive? What does inclusion means for me? Every answer will teach us something that what the gospel looks like in real life. Accessibility is not a technical issue. It is a spiritual discipline. A ramp, a sign language interpreter, a braille Bible when necessary, and an inclusive pulpit. These are not favors. They are acts of faithfulness that says you belong here. God speaks your language too. Invite people with disabilities into decision making, preaching, and ministry. Representation isn't decoration, it's transformation. And finally, we must connect disability justice to all struggles for justice. For women, for men, for children with disabilities, for workers and the environments. Because oppression is never isolated. When we free one group, we move closer to freeing all. The church we dream of is not perfect, but it is open, kind, and brave. It does not build walls of exclusion. It builds table where everyone can sit. It does not fear difference. It celebrates it as a reflection of God's infinite creativity. May the Asian church be remembered not only for its compassion, but for its courage to change, our willingness to adapt, and our strength to always embrace diversity. Let us build communities where every person, regardless of body or background or gender, can say that I am seen, I am valued, I am part of the story God is writing. Because the kingdom of God is not only green and peaceful, it is also accessible, inclusive, and led by love. May our Lord Jesus Christ always grant us his love and strength to always stand with our sisters and brothers who live with disabilities and in these changing times. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ajasari. We are now moving on to listen to the second voice from the Latin America region, which is coming from Alexandra Manasis, who is a psychologist and has been with Eden since 2001, has served with different capacities, including being the immediate past Latin America coordinator. Alexandra is currently working for the Mennonite Christian Church in Quito. Welcome.
Hola, buenos días.
Hello, good morning.
Les saludo desde América Latina.
Greetings from Latin
desde
America,
este pequeño país que se llama
from
Ecuador.
this small
desde la
country
capital
called
Quito. Para
Ecuador,
mí
and
es
from
un
the
gusto
capital Quito.
compartir
It's
con
my
ustedes
pleasure to
este
share with
webinar
you
y
this webinar
seguir reflexionando estos
and to
temas tan
continue reflecting on
para
these important and interesting topics
cuando hablamos de discapacidad.
when we talk about disability.
Estamos viviendo en un contexto global lleno
We're
de
living in a
violencia,
global
pobreza,
context that's filled with violence,
desarraigos
poverty,
de
and
las personas que
uprooting
nos
of
ha tocado
people who
migrar
have had to
por diferentes
migrate
temas.
for different reasons, especially due to structural injustice that's so present in Latin America. Democratic systems have many times been converted into systems of control and disciplinary systems that threaten the participation, resilience, freedom, and community life. In this socio-political and economic context, persons who feel more powerful, who feel more deeply the precarity and exclusion at all levels, are still the persons with disability because their rights are violated and they are made invisible in terms of their condition as political, social, and historical subjects. The struggle for the rights of persons with disability has been historically a struggle for dignity, visibility, and justice. Although international frameworks, as the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability from 2006, that has marked an important advancement in the recognition of the equality and non-discrimination. The way we understand disability still continues to be deeply conditioned by the cultural, religious, and colonial contexts. In the global south, in this case, Latin America, where structural inequalities are intertwined with the colonial heritage and the traditional religious narratives, the need arises to rethink disability theology from a decolonial perspective.
Ok. En el sur global,
in the global south, where structural inequalities are intertwined with colonial heritage and traditional religious narratives, there the need arises to rethink disability theology from a decolonized perspective that recovers the voices and experiences of those who are persons with disability. For many years, theology in the academic and pastoral practice has approached disability from paradigms that reproduce exclusion. In many religious discourses on disability, disability was interpreted as divine punishment, a spiritual test, or a symbol of human sin. So these readings that were born in context marked by dualism between the body and spirit configured a negative vision of the different body. As a result, persons with disability were seen as persons who need curing or redemption, but rarely were they conceived as theological subjects with their own voice. The consequences of these social representations of disability have brought practices and social discourses that have placed persons with disability not just in a situation of disability, but in a place of being inhabilitated, invalidated, invalids. Their bodies have been put in a category of not being legitimate. So through disability, they are basically showing the acceptation of the relationship of domination imposed by the hegemonic medical model. Decolonizing the theology of disability implies breaking with those inherited narratives and building theological thought based on the concrete experiences of persons with disabilities in the Southern contexts. In many countries of Latin America, Africa, and Asia, disability is deeply linked with poverty, the lack of access to education and health, and social exclusion. However, disability is also intertwined with practices, community practices of solidarity, spirituality, and resilience that offer new horizons to think about faith and justice. From this perspective, the voices of the global south not only question traditional theology, but propose an incarnated spirituality, spirituality that's incarnated in daily life, where a difference in the body or in the sensory system is not a defect, but rather a manifestation of divine diversity. Disability, in this sense, is not understood as a fault or a lack, but rather a way of being in the world that reveals deep aspects of the human experience: interdependence, vulnerability, the need of the other, and the beauty of diversity. So theological decolonization seeks to reconfigure the very center of theological discourse. It is about constructing theology from below, from the bodies, from the communities that have been systematically silenced. This perspective connects with other decolonizing movements like Black theology, feminist or indigenous theology that also denounce the imposition of a Eurocentric, rationalist, patriarchal theology. In this framework, the persons with disability are not seen as objects of charity, but rather as political and spiritual subjects, porters of knowledge, theologies, and practices that enrich the understanding of Jesus and his kingdom. In practice, this paradigm shift has deep implications. In faith communities of the Global South, the inclusion of persons with disability cannot be reduced just to physical or liturgical accessibility. It must imply a transformation of the power structures, transformation of religious language. The churches, communities, and theological spaces should be places where the corporal experiences that are diverse should be heard and valued, not just from a category of what is normal or abnormal, but rather a space where fragility is not seen as weakness, but as a space for an encounter with God. Finally, rethinking the rights of persons with disability from this decolonized perspective implies recognizing that justice is not only achieved through laws and policies, but also through deep changes in the spiritual and cultural conscience. Theology can and should be an ally in this process, not from paternalism, but through accompaniment and listening. The recognition of the voices of the Global South in disability theology will open new paths for a faith that is more human, inclusive, and transformational, where all bodies, all lives are understood as a reflection of divine mystery. In conclusion, decolonizing disability theology means recovering the dignity of persons with disability as subjects with full rights, faith, and wisdom. It means also healing the wounds of a theology that historically has been marked by exclusion and silence, and to construct from the South a theology that celebrates diversity as a gift from God and that is actively committed to justice, equity, and full life for all.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. That was beautiful. We are now going to hear the last voice from Africa by Reverend Mary Chipoka. Welcome on board, Reverend Mary.
Thank you all and good afternoon from wherever you are. Good morning. So I'm Mary. I'm Reverend Mary. Once again, let me set up a little bit. I'm Mary. I wanted to talk about, from the introduction, my name is Reverend Mary Zenda. I attended primary school at Henry Murai School for the Deaf. And secondary school, I went to Emelan Hill School. After completing my studies, I pursued a course in hairdressing. Later, I attended the South African Deaf Christian Ministry College to study theology. Upon completion, I was ordained as a minister in the Reverend Church in Zimbabwe, where I currently serve as a chaplain at Henry Murai School for the Deaf. Involvement of churches in promoting disability rights, the context of Africa. So thank you very much for the opportunity. It is a true honor to reflect on the involvement of churches in promoting disability rights, especially within the African context. Across Africa, the church is not only a place of worship, it is a pillar of community, life, moral compass, and often trusted institution that shapes social attitudes. Because of this influence, the church has a unique, powerful role to play, championing the rights of dignity of persons with disabilities. From Genesis, we learn that every person is created in the image of God. Jesus' ministry, we also learn the same. We deeply inclusive. He saw, touched, and Jesus saw, touched, and healed those society ignored. He restored dignity before healing the body. Therefore, promoting disability rights is not charity, it's discipleship, it is justice, it is faith, it is action. Current realities in Africa, persons with disability continue to face stigma and exclusion from communities, school, and workplaces. Barriers in accessing worship places are physically incapable of socially and unwelcoming, limited representation in church leadership and decision making. However, there is also progress in the churches as well. So the role of the church, the role of African church is re-examining theology to challenge harmful interpretations that equate disability with sin or punishment. Some people think that disability is sin or it is a punishment from God. So our responsibility as a church is to re-examine the theology of that challenge. Training pastors and church workers in disability inclusion and accessibility. Creating spaces of participation where persons with disability are not just recipients of care, but active leaders in ministries and decision making. Collaborating with government and civil society to influence inclusive policies and resource allocation. The church must become both a voice and a model for inclusion. Yes. So let us remember, inclusion is not an act of kindness, it is a recognition of God's image in every position. So the African church has the moral and spiritual authority to reshape how society sees disability, from limitation to diverse ability, from exclusion to belong, and from silence to advocacy. Let me continue. As we begin this new chapter, as we begin this new chapter, again, let me take it again. Okay. As we begin this new chapter, may our churches only speak about inclusion, but leave it not inclusion. As we begin this new chapter, may our churches not only speak about inclusion, but leave it showing the body of Christ is truly whole when all the members belong to participate fully in the church. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you all, and may God bless you. If you have any question, you can chat on the box.
Thank you so much, Reverend Mary. I would now hand over to John for an interactive question and answer section.
Yep. Yes, thank you. We do have a couple of questions. First, I'll take from Nobert Mostert for the first speaker. If there is no members with disabilities in a church congregation, what can we do to encourage people with disabilities to come to our church and help them become active congregants?
Yeah, thank you very much. So that we share this opportunity
Sí,
for all of us
precisamente
to
creo que
contribute to the question. I just want to share that we in Eden have produced a booklet which can also be downloaded from the website of the World Council of Churches that has guidelines for disability mainstreaming in churches and communities. Our hope is that this particular booklet, it's quite small, it's not very big, but it has a lot of examples and also case studies on how we can include persons with disabilities in churches and in our church communities. So we can share this with any one of us to help start the conversation. Thank you.
creo que precisamente la construcción de
Yes.
comunidades que acojan
Building communities that welcome and include, that's a challenge. And I think that when persons with disabilities don't find in this main space that should be a welcoming space and love and compassion in the churches, if we don't find those spaces, then we don't go. Because we have experienced a lot of rejection, a lot of exclusion. So if the churches don't have a language, body language and a theological language, if the language is not a language of love and compassion, it's very difficult for persons with disability to attend those churches. So I think that unfortunately continues being a challenge that hasn't been worked on sufficiently. So we need to work on all those languages so that persons with disabilities will have will find in the churches a place of refuge and friendship and companionship. If not, on the contrary, we need to continue working to create that inclusive space.
Wonderful. Thank you. And one last question from Rolando. And it starts with a bit of, sorry. I think both the inclusion model and the concept of disability should be questioned from a decolonial perspective. Inclusion has been understood as a concession from dominant sectors to people with disabilities. That is, from a power perspective. On the other hand, the concept of disability privileges capacity over the dignity of people, which means a utilitarian view of the human being. What do the presenters think of this?
Let me go first. I totally agree. And that is why we have started these conversations around decolonization and disability, because we know very well that churches play a very special role in the society, and they have over the years been able to complement issues that are being dealt with from even the governments. And so by equipping our churches to be able to look at these decolonial activities from a lens of decolonization is going to really help us to open up conversations, to have the lived experiences also taken up as a very critical area of study, and also to ask ourselves, where is my place as a person with a disability in this dominant kind of theology? So I'm very excited about this new phase, and I look forward to more interactions between persons with disabilities and the churches, especially on this dominant narrative that needs to be decolonized. Thank you.
Lo que pasa es que descolonizar tiene que ver como un proceso
The
espiritual,
issue is
social y
that
cultural.
decolonization has to be seen as a spiritual, social, and cultural process that is going against domination. So yes, churches have made some steps, some progress, but we need to continue doing this work, because sometimes, since there are cultural issues, the culture is an important way of determining how humans view the world and view other human beings. So if we understand that disability isn't a tragedy, an individual tragedy, but rather a legitimate expression of human diversity, and that persons with diversity are not objects, but subjects, I think all of that we need to do. It's clear to us, but that's not clear to all persons. So that's why Jesus in the Gospels breaks the barriers of exclusion. So he goes out to touch, to heal, to speak, because his actions, I think, didn't seem to normalize persons, but rather restore dignity and reunite them in the community. So these gestures of Jesus are the gestures that spiritual decolonization does, putting life even above the laws of the Sabbath, for example, instead of judgment.
Thank you very much. And I am very glad that we've had these interactions. And as I had mentioned, that our aim, or rather the outcome of this project, is to have a strengthened evidence-based data on churches' involvement in disability rights and advocacy that we can share. Create churches that are sensitized and equipped with advocacy skills to advocate for the domestication and implementation of the convention, and also look at some of the advocacy initiatives on work, employment, climate change that can actually be initiated by the churches in their own context and from their own countries. And lastly, we look forward to getting from all of us position papers on decolonizing disability theology from our own context. And so we look forward to working with churches, theological institutions, and research institutions to also help us to understand on the decolonial disability theology. So I have on the screen a call to action. And the call to action starts with the main goal, that is nothing about us without us. And we have two areas of call to action. The first one is centering on lived experiences. That is, we want to prioritize the voices and the leadership of persons with disabilities in this particular process. And secondly, we want to also get the opportunity to integrate indigenous knowledge systems, that is communal and spiritual perspectives on disability, and more so on interdependency, such as the African philosophy of Ubuntu, that is nothing about us without us, but together we can make it. You cannot exist if I do not exist. So we want to look at some of these contextual kind of philosophies that talk about indigenous knowledge systems that have existed and are being eroded. And that is the other angle of decolonization that we want to embark on. Thank you very much. Over to you, Siovata.
Thank you so much, Angeline, Mr. Conrad, Alexandra, Reverend Mary Chipoka, and Chiarsari, and all our participants for listening to this webinar. We look forward to working with all of you In case you want to reach to Eden, you can write to info@eden.or.ke, and we will continue working together. Thank you very much.